We did mention, because of the nature of the talk tonight, I wouldn't want to take up too much of your time, that we will not have the conventional praise and prayer items. So please just follow in your bulletin. I would still like you to spend some time in prayer later on. So I'm sure you've all seen this picture. This is the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. It is not the Chinese virus. You can see there it is actually a real virus, a real organism with all the features of a living organism. So apologies, or at least let's not insult the virus by calling it by any other name. I came across this tweet by our president reminding us, and who of you can still remember last year around about this time? This Friday will mark exactly 1 year since the first case of coronavirus was reported in South Africa. And we all know the group from Italy who arrived into our country and soon were diagnosed with COVID-19. At that time, it wasn't even called COVID-19, if you remember correctly. But this is the heartful part. Since then, since that fateful Friday, almost a year ago, more than 1.5 million people in South Africa have been infected, and nearly 50,000, well, right now, over 50,000, as of today, over 50,000 people have been reported to have died from the disease. All of us know somebody personally who has passed away. In January alone, I buried 3 people within the space of 20 days, and many in our church have lost family members as a result of COVID-19. So this is important and relevant. We all know by now that we are at the tail end of the second wave. There's a picture of the first wave, which was June, July, August, and September, early September, and then starting from around about the first week in December, we experienced this horrific second wave, driven especially by the new variant 501YV2, and now we're at the end, and unfortunately, we are right in the middle now, preparing once again for a third wave. And the scientists are mentioning about the Easter weekend, the long weekends that are coming up, potentially many religious gatherings that can take place, and we're looking at a few super spreader events which could then drive the third wave. And so what's this talk about this variant strain? All of you know about it by now. The principle is coronaviruses, like most viruses, they naturally mutate. Viruses mutate to live, and they live to mutate. And the one that has been with us through the second wave is 501YV2. It's been shown to be more transmittable. The scientists did tell us that it's not more deadly. I feel that it was probably as deadly, or even probably more deadly than the first peak. In my case, in my practice, it was causing more severe illness, I thought, and many complications, especially from day 10, day 11, day 12, patients tended to crash and land up in ICU with severe COVID pneumonia. The testing was all the same, the treatment was all the same, and when I made the slide a few weeks ago, unknown whether the new strain will impact the effectiveness of the vaccine, and I'll show you a slide now which actually shows that it did impact the effectiveness of the AstraZeneca, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. However, if you saw on the news today, big broadcast about the findings from the same 501YV2 strain, which shows that it has a number of neutralizing antibodies which will probably be quite effective and protective against many other strains. So those who had COVID over this past second peak, and if they had it from the 501YV2 strain, it augurs well because they would have good immunity against other strains, and in particular against strains from the third wave. It's almost as if they would be already vaccinated. It was with big fanfare that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine arrived at OR Tambo a few weeks ago. It was actually on the 1st of February 2021, and it was rushed off for testing and validation in Bloemfontein. And just a few days later, big press conference which announced that the Oxford vaccine is only 22% effective for prevention of mild to moderate disease amongst young people. In fact, only 22% effective. And there you can see the AstraZeneca vaccine in South Africa, a lowly 22%. And immediately, all the plans to vaccinate healthcare workers with that particular vaccine were shelved, put on hold. In fact, my understanding now is that vaccine has been sold to some countries in Africa. They will keep at least 100,000 doses for research purposes. But you would have also seen on the news that our Professor Mahdi was quite upset that he felt that it could still have been used to inoculate or vaccinate the elderly population who needed a vaccine. It should not have been allowed to go to waste, even though it had a short expiry date. On the right-hand side there, you see the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and you can see the better efficacy in South Africa, 57% compared to the Oxford vaccine of only 22%. And hence, this vaccine has now been made available for research purposes, and healthcare workers have been receiving it. So a little bit more about the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. It's a single-dose vaccine. It's probably the only one available right now as a single dose. As you know, Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine are two-dose vaccines. Efficacy against the pre-existing variants, especially Y501. You can see overall efficacy 66%. It's 85% protective against severe illness, and I love that, 100% protective against death. So what that is basically saying is there is still a small chance of you getting COVID with the vaccine. However, if you have the vaccine, you will not die from COVID. And that's the bottom line. That's the degree of clarity we have around the vaccine. The efficacy against the 501YV2 variant, 57%, and again 100% protective against death. It doesn't need those very, very low temperatures to be stored compared to Moderna and Pfizer vaccine. Anything from 2 to -8 degrees Celsius is more than sufficient. And we are on the way to getting 9 million doses. So far, we've only received 80,000. Well, the second batch of 80,000 arrived this past Saturday. So let's just get in a little bit into the basics about a vaccine. What is a vaccine, and how does a vaccine work? Well, vaccines are basically simple medications, medicine, a particular molecule that is designed to prevent diseases that can be dangerous or even deadly. It works with your body's natural immune system to develop antibodies, which in turn will then protect you against that disease before you get it or without getting the disease. So it helps your body to produce antibodies as if you were exposed. So think of all those who have just had COVID over the past few months. They have natural antibodies, natural immunity, which ought to be protective against reinfection. Now, here is a way of getting that immunity without actually getting COVID. And that's the important thing. You don't have to get the disease first in order to develop immunity. You just have to take the vaccine, and you are automatically guaranteed immunity. And so this is why vaccines make such powerful medications. They do not treat, they do not cure, but they certainly prevent dangerous illnesses. And you think of all the other illnesses, severe childhood illnesses that we have been prevented against getting purely because of our childhood immunization programs. So vaccines, in reality, train your immune system using a harmless form of the virus, SARS-CoV-2, which then causes COVID-19. The vaccine stimulates an immune response without causing illness, so you don't have to get sick first in order to develop immunity. Now, there are different types of COVID vaccines, all working on different parts of the immune system, but they all do the same thing. They trigger a response within your immune system, which then builds immune memory so that when you are exposed to the COVID-19 virus, you have protection and you're able to fight off that infection. Now, one of the biggest complaints or comments that we hear from people is, why would you want to be a guinea pig? I want to rather wait until the vaccine has been tested, and I first want to see that it's safe before I go for my vaccine. Why would you want to be a guinea pig? Now, the truth of the matter is, by the time the vaccine is available for you and I to receive it, it has already gone through at least 3 phases of trials. By the time you're getting it, that is called phase 4. So phase 1, let me just take you through the science very quickly. Phase 1 is where you have between 20 and 100 healthy volunteers who volunteer themselves, who come forward, and here we want to check for safety. Everyone wants to know today, is the vaccine safe? It is absolutely safe. The safety has been tested first before we even look at whether the vaccine can work. The first thing that needs to be shown is that particular vaccine safe? And then, are there any serious side effects? How does the different doses relate to the vaccine and its efficacy? Is it enough to actually cause an immune response? Can it generate an immune response enough to prevent illness? That's phase 1, 20 to 100 volunteers. Phase 2 is usually several hundred to 1,000 volunteers. And here the questions are, what are the more common short-term side effects, if any? What is the body's immune response? And are there signs that the vaccine is actually protective? So here we focus on safety and efficacy. Is it able to protect you? And then phase 3 involves thousands and thousands of volunteers. And here the question is, can you compare it between those who receive a placebo vaccine versus the actual vaccine, and how does it differ? And how well can it actually protect people from disease? So the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that is given to healthcare workers, for instance, right now is part of a phase 3 trial. So by the time the vaccine, you are going to get it, whether it is in phase 2, with the government rollout, you can be assured that this vaccine is safe, it works, and has already been tested in many, many thousand people. And I think I've got a slide that shows you just now, just more or less how many people have actually been tested to receive that vaccine. So here's a slide that just shows a platform of all the vaccines. Don't worry too much about it, but in the middle on the left-hand side there, you can see where it says RNA vaccines. Those are your Pfizer and Moderna vaccines that are available. Those are messenger RNA vaccines. And then the top right is your viral vector vaccine. Now, viral vector vaccines, it's an amazing thing. So you use a virus that's been around for a long time, a harmless virus, harmless. In this case, one of the adenoviruses that are responsible for colds, and the virus is attached, the genetic material is attached to the vaccine, and allows that adenovirus to be a vector to carry it into your body. It delivers the viral protein to the cell, and it enables you to build up an immune response. So that's how the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca virus vaccines work. I said I want to tell you about how many participants they have in some of the trials. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine, 60,000 participants in phase 3. AstraZeneca, 50,000. There's a Pfizer, 44,000. Moderna vaccine, 30,000. So please stop thinking and stop saying that I don't want a vaccine that has not been tested. It has been comprehensively tested. You do not need to worry about the safety aspect. You do not need to be worried that you will be the part of a guinea pig to see what's going to happen. We already know what the vaccine does in humans, and therefore you do not need to fear about taking the vaccine for that purpose. Now, again, there's a number of trials. People who actually got the vaccine, you can see the Moderna, and in the middle there, the Oxford AstraZeneca, and below that, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Now, look at how many people got the vaccine. It's 15,000, 18,000, 5,000, 22,000, and look at how efficacious these vaccines were in the trials in phase 3. All of them 100% efficacious against prevention of hospitalization and prevention of death. This is amazing data and shows that the vaccine is safe and can be trusted to make sure that in the event that you do get COVID, you will not land up in hospital needing oxygen, high flow nasal oxygen, and you will not die from COVID-19. A little bit more about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. This is the one that's currently being used in South Africa. It's being rolled out now to all the healthcare workers as part of the government's phase 1, early phase of rolling out the vaccine program. It only needs one dose. This is such a pleasure. It can be stored up to 3 months in a regular fridge. The issue with the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine is that they require very, very low temperatures. And I'm just scared if we have load shedding, what happens to those vaccines. Currently, it offers around about 60% protection against 501YV2 or B1351 mutant variant strain, which is excellent protection. Hence, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was discarded, and it still has approval only in a research setting in South Africa. It has just been approved by the US, the FDA in the States. So you can imagine it's gone through those rigorous testing protocols and been deemed to be safe and is recommended. So that will be the third vaccine that is now being passed in the US for distribution there. This is a busy slide, but I just want to highlight a few things that's just remarkable about how good this vaccine. This is the Johnson & Johnson the Ad26-COVID-2S vaccine. This is the one I received against severe and critical COVID-19. Once you've had the vaccine, within 14 days after vaccination, it's already 73% effective. Within 28 days after vaccination, it's already 82% effective against preventing severe or critical disease. I'm on 7 days now. So by next week, Wednesday, God willing, I would have 73% efficacy for prevention of severe to critical COVID-19. And by another further 2 weeks, within a month of receiving the vaccine, that percentage goes up to a massive 82%. So that's an amazing statistic about the benefit of this COVID-19 vaccine. Now, if we can just talk quickly about answering some of your questions, and these are some of the questions that have come through. These are the questions that you are asking. Firstly, how safe? Everyone's worried. How can a vaccine be developed so quickly? And surely if it is developed so quickly, it cannot be safe. I've shown you how the vaccines go through these rigorous testing protocols in order to be deemed safe. It has to be approved before you and I can receive it. And so, remember, have already been platforms. The MERS virus, the SARS virus of a few years ago, those platforms were already built for vaccines. So when COVID-19 came along, it merely just had to be built on. So they were not starting from scratch to develop a vaccine. Lots of money has been invested by many countries. And also with many vaccines, what tends to hold things up is looking for healthy volunteers to volunteer to participate in the trials. Yet with the coronavirus vaccines, thousands of people came forward to volunteer to be tested. And another important fact is, while all the testing was going on, the manufacturers were very confident. They, in fact, started manufacturing the vaccines at the same time that development was going on. And this slide just shows it on the top there compared to the bottom. The bottom shows traditionally the timeline for development of a vaccine, which can take anything from 4 to 10 years. And here you can see during the yellow and the green, during their testing and approval phase, these companies were already manufacturing the vaccine. So that by the time it was approved, it was ready for delivery, and hence the speed. And for me, that is just a blessing, because imagine if now in South Africa alone, 50,000 dead, 1.5 million people infected, and we still had to wait another 4 to 6 years for a vaccine. Imagine how many lives would be lost. This is a gift from God that we can have a vaccine available so quickly and start inoculating within a year of the first few cases of COVID-19 being found. Can I get COVID-19 from the vaccine? Absolutely not. In the same way that we tell people over and over, year in and year out, the flu vaccine cannot make you sick. It cannot give you flu. In the same way, the COVID-19 vaccine cannot give you COVID. It does not contain any live virus. I've shown you that. And therefore, you can't catch it. Now, remember, once you receive your vaccine, there is a lag between developing those antibodies. I've shown you now in the case of mine, it's about 14 days and then another 14 days for full efficacy. So that's about a month. So I technically can still get COVID in this time. I cannot blame the vaccine for giving me COVID. It is because I did not have enough protection of antibodies from the time that I received the vaccine. In the same way with the flu vaccine, if you get sick after you've had the flu vaccine, it is not the flu vaccine that caused you to get ill. It is the fact of the time lag in between developing protection. You probably had it brewing there even before you received the vaccine. So please do not blame vaccines if you get some sort of flu-like illness after. Right? Does the vaccine have any side effects? Obviously, everything has side effects, but the benefits far outweigh the side effects. Now, I can talk about my own case. I had a sore arm. It was quite painful. I knew that they had given me something. There was definitely muti in there. It was not water or placebo. My arm was sore for at least 24 hours. But thankfully, I had no other symptoms. There was no tiredness, no headache, no myalgias, no muscles or joint pains, no chills, no nausea and vomiting. But these have been reported as fairly common, yet minor and of short duration. Now, many are worried about this issue of whole fertility. If I take the vaccine, I'll never be able to have babies, it's going to damage my fertility. There's absolutely no evidence. If you would still like to have a baby one day, it would be safe for you to have the vaccine. Now, as of now, they are only enrolling pregnant females into studies to test how efficacious and how safe it is. So up until we have been given the go-ahead to do vaccinations in females who are pregnant, it is not yet the right thing to do. So we still have to wait. What we do now, based on now, there is no problem with trying to fall pregnant with the vaccine, being pregnant with the vaccine, and your ability to fall pregnant at a later stage. Fertility problems are not a feature or a side effect of any vaccine, and especially not the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, should someone who is pregnant or breastfeeding get a COVID vaccine? As of now, yes, it's going to be a personal choice. You have to wait up. As I mentioned, the studies are being done, and soon we will have data. Now, we do know that pregnancy can be a comorbid condition, and you are at risk of having more severe infection were you to become infected. So it would be recommended, based on the safety profile, if it is deemed to be safe, it would be recommended that all women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, that they volunteer for or come forward for the vaccine. Are vaccines safe for children? They probably will be. Some of them are registered for teenagers from the age of 16 or 18 and up. And again, the next phase of trials will be to enroll children to ascertain its safety. But it would be wonderful for children to be able to get the vaccine. This brings me to another point, the importance of parents and adults vaccinating themselves. Why? Because the benefit will spill over to the children and to the very old who may not have access to the vaccine. So the best thing that you can do to protect your children while they do not have access to the vaccine is for you to get vaccinated. Just think about that. There's a big thing about can the vaccine change my DNA? It's going to get into my DNA and change who I am. There's a chip in there. Absolute nonsense. The mRNA vaccines, which is the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, do not change or interact with your DNA. These vaccines are messengers, so they just convey a message to the spike protein to produce with the antigen to produce an antibody response. In no way do they enter the nucleus of the cell where the DNA actually is. So they do not react or interact with your DNA, and there's absolutely no way that the vaccine could modify or change your DNA. Now, what about those who have just had COVID over the last peak? We still recommend that they do receive the vaccine. Remember, those antibodies are short-lived. They do not last for long. So at least within 30 days after you have recovered from your COVID experience, we do recommend that you need to have the COVID vaccine. This is the burning question: how long does it take for the vaccine to become effective? How long does it last? We know how quickly it becomes effective. In my case, within 14 to 28 days with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We are unsure at this stage how long that efficacy will last. And so studies are ongoing to see, will it last for a year? Will it last for a few months, 2 years? Will we still need a booster vaccine at a later stage? So that's the kind of data that we are waiting and the studies that we're looking for. If you've received the vaccine, do you still need to wear masks? Absolutely. Remember that nothing is 100% protective. So you still need to wear masks. And you still need to wear masks because there are still going to be those who refuse the vaccine. And those are the dangerous ones, okay? So make sure that you still practice all the safety, take into consideration all the safety protocols. Keep your mask on, even though you have had your vaccine. So we are waiting until everyone gets the vaccine to at least reconsider whether we'll be able to do that. This is just a quick slide just to highlight some of the other myths. Is there a microchip in the vaccine? No, there are no chips. No one wants to put a chip in you. We are not that important. Has it anything to do with 5G? No, absolutely nothing. But nothing to do with radiation and 5G. I've answered that. What about, do we know, people are saying, how can you let them put something in you? You don't even know what is in the vaccine. We do know what is in the vaccine. Thank you. They are not putting foreign substances in there. We know exactly what is in there, and this is why we volunteer. So please follow the science. Don't come with stories like we don't even know what's going on. We know exactly what is in the vaccine. Okay, can you test positive because of the vaccine? No. If you do an antibody test, it will show reactive. But if you do a COVID test, it will not show that you have COVID because you do not have COVID. You have the protection against COVID. It will not alter your DNA. Let me just run through quickly I may go a little bit over time, but this is important. Some of the objections that Christians have to the vaccine, very quickly. There's a big, especially in the mainstream media, you'll see Christians are saying, yes, but the vaccines contain aborted fetal cells, and how can we take this vaccine? Christians should not be taking the vaccine. That means we are condoning abortions. Well, the background is for this. There is an important difference between fetal cell lines and fetal tissue. Fetal tissue comes from abortions or aborted babies. Fetal cell lines are cells that are grown in a laboratory, and these were taken from an aborted fetus way back in the early 1970s in the Netherlands. It's called the HEK293 cell line. Now, some of these cell lines are used in the development of the vaccine, in the confirmation to make sure that it works, and also in the production. Okay. However, in the vaccines that we have, there are no fetal cells, not used in the making or testing. So none of the vaccines that we have, and the one that was injected into me, contains any fetal cell tissue. So there is no reason to be fearful or to feel guilty about the fact that you are part of some sort of abortion. This was an elective abortion that happened way back in the 1970s. It has nothing to do with us today. None of the vaccines that we use have any fetal tissue in them. All right? And at no point in the development of any of the vaccines were fetuses required or abortions required in order to assist in the development of the vaccine. A lot of people have spoken about this, you're getting the mark of the beast. The vaccine is the mark of the beast. No, the vaccine is not the mark of the beast. And dear Christian, if you know your eschatology, we will not be here during the tribulation and the great tribulation in particular, when you will need the mark of the beast. We will be in heaven. So the mark of the beast and Antichrist and the vaccine is the least of your worries, and is not a reason to refuse the vaccine. So as I draw my talk to a close, dear Christian, there is no vaccine against COVID-19 that will make you infertile, that will change who you are, modify your DNA. There is no vaccine that's going to put a chip inside you. There is no vaccine that has the mark of the beast on it. There is no vaccine that is unsafe and not effective. All the vaccines are safe and effective. And please trust me and believe me when I say the vaccine is the only way that we are going to beat this pandemic. So please, I'm urging you, everyone who's watching tonight, let us do our part and make sure that we get vaccinated so that we can come back to some sort of normalcy, some sort of normal life that we have been used to in the past. Now, many Christians have no problem being diagnosed with diabetes and hypertension and taking their medication and preventing complications. In the same way, you have come on board with the safety protocols. Wear your mask, wash your hands, watch your distance, keep your windows open. So in the same way, it's an additional step in that process. Please, the most effective way of preventing COVID is by taking the vaccine. So please do so. If I can leave you with the verse, Mark 12, verse 31, it talks about the second most important command, second greatest commandment. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. Now, if you think about it, what is the best way with regard to COVID-19 and this pandemic? What is the best way that you can show love to your neighbor? What is the best way that you can show compassion, kindness, love, and care for others? Taking the vaccine. Taking the vaccine shows obedience to this command. Taking the vaccine shows that you care about your neighbor, because by vaccinating yourself, you become protected, you become so-called immune to the illness, and therefore you have shown love to your neighbor. Now, if all of us can do that, imagine the difference we can make. And so we are taking the vaccine not just for our own good, but for the good of others, for the common good, for our families, for our church, for our colleagues, and eventually for our communities and even our country. So there it is. I received my vaccine last Wednesday. It's exactly a week now, and I feel fine. I'm 100%, and I'm thrilled to have received my vaccine. And my heart just goes out to those who did not live long enough to be able to get this vaccine and who have passed away. My heart goes out to all those volunteers who came forward to have the vaccine tested on them, so that we can benefit today and receive this vaccine. What is still going to happen? Well, phase 1 is the vaccination of the frontline healthcare workers. That's 1.25 million people. We are not even on 80,000, a full 80,000, probably about 90,000 now. Phase 2 will be your essential workers, your people in congregate settings, those over the age of 60, 18-year-olds with comorbidities and above. And then phase 3, all you healthy folk, those you are over 18, younger than 60, do not have comorbidities, you will have to wait, and you will be part of the 22.5 million people that will be vaccinated during phase 3. So your essential workers are there, people in those settings, shelters, prisons, working in the hospitality industry, and all those who are diabetic, obese, chronic lung disease, and cardiovascular disease. It'll be interesting to see how quickly people come forward to say that they are overweight or obese and lining up for their vaccine. And that is what we are looking forward to. In the meantime, in closing, folks, please keep your masks on. Wear your masks, wash your hands, watch your distance. Please wait together. Yes, we are under level 1 now. Many things have been open. Industries have been open. The doors have been open towards gatherings, whether it's political, social, within reason. Please don't rush to gather. Don't rush to have parties. Don't rush to let your guard down. Wear those masks. Keep those hands sanitized. Watch your distance. Wait together. And last W, when it's your turn, please, I trust that I've laid the foundation and laid my case, made a strong case for each and every one of you who have watched me tonight. A very strong case, both from a scientific and even a biblical Christian point of view. I believe, dear Christian, it is our duty to be vaccinated. And I trust and pray that you too will stand up and be in that line and wait your turn to be vaccinated when it comes. And let's just pray that we do get access to those vaccines as soon as possible, and especially hopefully before the third wave comes. So thank you so much for joining us. Please pass this message along or make this talk available so as many people as possible can access it. Thank you again, and good night. Let's just close in a word of prayer. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this talk tonight. We thank you for people who have watched and who have listened, and I trust and pray, Lord, that they've taken what we've said tonight to heart, that especially from a Christian biblical point of view, we need to be thankful to God for giving men the gift of being able to scientists to be able to find a way out of this, to find vaccines that are both safe and effective. We thank you that God has given them the gift. And Father, let us now be responsible to receive it, to stand in line for it, and at all times, Father, to acknowledge Thee as the supreme, sovereign God over every single thing that happens to us, including COVID-19. We pray for our government and our scientists that these vaccines may soon be available to as many people in South Africa as possible, so that we can develop some sort of herd immunity to protect our population. Thank you for our church, thank you for our families, and thank you for everyone who's watching tonight. We pray this now in the precious and wonderful name of our Lord and Savior. Amen.